Welcome to this week's episode of the Opt-in podcast. I am so stinking excited. I literally woke up this morning and I'm like, today is going to be the day that we deliver all of the good stuff to this community. What's extra special is this is going to air. We were recording this a few weeks before, but it's going to air right after Mother's Day. So we are going to be able to just enter a new era. I kind of see Mother's Day as kind of the birthday of all moms, so to speak, or that's what it should be. And we're going to enter a new area with all this wisdom that we are going to get from today's guest. So today's guest requires no introduction, but I'm going to gush on her just for a few minutes. We have Scottie Durrett with us today. She is the host of the Momplex podcast, but that is just the tip of the iceberg to what she does. She's a mama of 3 kids who are incredibly active and busy. And she has an amazing following on social media where she takes her skills as a life coach and pours into the community of humans that identify themselves as mothers, whoever they may be in whatever season of motherhood they are in. And what's even better is she's pulling people together from all sorts of backgrounds and experiences in her High Vibe Moms Club. And we get to spend some time together. I joined this week just shooting the shit and talking about what's difficult and how we're going to get through it. And she guides all of us along the way with her practical advice. She's an open book and will share the good, the bad, and the ugly of being a mom. So welcome to the show, Scottie.
Thank you. That was an amazing introduction and I love it. Yeah, shooting the shit, right? That is probably the best way to describe what it's like working with me and being around me. But thank you. That was a wonderful introduction and I adore you. I mean, I can't gush on Melissa enough. You and I the universe keeps putting us together, thankfully. And the more I get to know you, the more I'm like, I think we're supposed to unite together and form these communities, right? And get us on the path that's going to help us like make real change, right? And really, like you always say, it's like, dropping the victim mindset and realizing, oh my gosh, we are so flipping powerful. And so I love being in your world. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. I mean, what I love is that we both come from this perspective in very different lanes, that you're capable of anything.
Yeah.
You just have to stop the negative narratives. You just have to get out of your own way and just focus on what you want to do. And one of the things that I love about what you share about your experience and your journey in motherhood is that you're a bit of a reformed complainer. I think we've all been there. I think we all have these moments where we sit down with our friends or other moms, or we're in the car line at school and we're just, bitching about life. And I think that sometimes is also where, my community of working individuals really starts to build the bricks of an internal narrative that's just applying a ton of guilt on not being enough and not showing up in the way that other people are and are complaining about or think that they should be. So when you think about mom guilt, like what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of that topic?
Well, I would say that every mom has it. So I think the first thing we need to recognize is that we are part of this incredible world. Mm-hmm. Every mom, when she puts her head on that pillow, likely wants just the same things. I want to live a happy, healthy life, and I want the best for my kids, right? So working out of the house mom, working from home mom, stay at home mom. I would love for moms to finally stop segregating yourself and understand that every mom has mom guilt, and that similar to stress, you can't avoid mom guilt. It's because we care. So it's a beautiful thing that you have it. But when it starts to hinder you from living your life, if it starts to dictate how you are making decisions, and if it starts to create a massive obstacle in you pursuing the things that you want to pursue, that's when it's probably it has too much of a hold on you. So it's something that I don't think we can say, I've eliminated mom guilt, but you can get to know yourself in a way where you start to recognize the triggers and you start to give yourself opportunities to cope so that you can move forward, right? We just want to make sure it's not inhibiting us from living our life. But it's, I think a lot of times there's the stay-at-home mom who looks at the working out of the house mom and thinks, she has it so easy. She gets to leave the house. I don't ever get to leave the house. Gosh, it would be so nice. And then you have the working out of the house mom who looks over like, I never get to make it to the, the school back to school luncheon, and I miss the performance again. And it's so I think we need to let those assumptions disappear. That's the only way we're going to be able to support each other and say like, hey, I have mom guilt too. This is what helps me. Why don't you try it? Oh, maybe I'll try this. And then, oh my gosh, your world just opened up and you have somebody who can look at you in the eyes and say, I get it. Let's see if this helps us. And so that's the first thing that I think of when mom guilt happens, that you're not in a vacuum. You're not alone. You could probably talk to any mom and she gets it. So you do have an immediate support system, which is beautiful.
Yeah. And I think too, when you start to share the assumptions that other people are putting on you, and you can just have a candid conversation around, I'm feeling horrible because I don't drop my kids off from school and pick them up every day. And you get into conversations with people and you realize that nobody thinks you should be doing that. Yeah. Nobody cares. Or you're putting that pressure on yourself. I think sometimes we like pile shame on top of shame. So we have this mom guilt situation, and then we're so shameful about the fact that we've got these perceived deficiencies that we don't even put it out into the universe and talk about it, so nobody can dispel it. And getting into active conversation, I think, is really important. Do you have any experiences where you've just kind of had these like aha moments with other people where you're like, oh, I get it. Like we see each other. I'm not crazy.
I'm not crazy. I think I was guilty. When I started to feel bad, I never really connected the dots, what was causing that. So I immediately thought something's wrong with me. So let me just pile more onto my to-do list. Let me just overcomplicate things even more. And I was just treating those surface symptoms. I was just treating, if I just sleep better, then everything will be okay. But I wasn't really digging like what's really going on. And I remember being at a friend's house and we were just sitting around bitching, drinking, bitching, complaining, talking trash about our husbands. And I finally was like, this makes me feel worse. This isn't helping me at all. Now I'm going to go home with a gossip hangover and I don't feel any better than I did this time yesterday. And so I started to bring that up. And that was my first step. Like, okay, I get it. We're kind of bitching, but does anybody have any solutions? Like, I'm not sleeping and I'm still just, my body hurts. Does anybody else feel that way? And then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, I kind of dread waking up in the morning too. I don't know what that is. We started just to kind of share that we also had tension headaches or high blood pressure. And then that started to help us realize, oh, you do too. I do too. Try this, and that kind of started the conversation. But I don't think it took me a while to identify the root cause of this is my self-neglect, my self-imposed expectations, and then my own shame, right? My shame spiral that just, as soon as my head hit the pillow, Calm Mom came out and all of my, okay, did my kid only eat saltines today? Did I yell too much today? Did I speed? Did I run that stop sign? Was I texting and driving? Right? Like you start to spin through all the stuff that you did that day. And then you stay up too late. And then what happens? You wake up, you're exhausted. So then the whole thing starts all over again. So we really when I started to share my surface symptoms and other moms started to look at me and say, I feel that way too. Then it kind of gave me an aha that, wait a second, maybe I'm not abnormal. Maybe there's other people out there who feel the way that I do. And that kind of got me curious. And I started just digging deeper. And that really started things off.
That makes a lot of sense. And you hit on it really briefly, but when we're in these seasons of just carrying the weight of the guilt, how do you think it affects the kids and the family as a whole? How do you think your kids or even your husband was affected by that?
I mean, for a long time, I was so self-absorbed with my own unhappiness and pain. I didn't consider them, straight up. I have a lot of regret with how I spent the first 10 years of motherhood, but I pivoted and we can talk about that. But, at the time I was so self-neglected and I was so dependent on external validation to fill that self-neglect that I couldn't see out the weeds. I was so disappointed in how I was feeling about myself and I wasn't getting the validation that I wanted. So it just kept the pity party going. And so the way I can say it's like I never looked up and realized that how I was moving through my day, there was a ripple effect. I didn't realize it. And then one day my daughter, I did a post on this. She literally said, I don't want to be a mom when I grow up. And I said, okay, your choice. I'm very open to choices. I'm very much like that. And I said, can you tell me why? And she says, well, you look miserable and you were like, you're terrible, basically in so many words, like you yell all the time, you're crying, you're bitching all the time. She's like, this looks terrible. And that was such a slap in the face because for the first time I realized, they're noticing. They're watching me. They're feeling my energy vibe. So I can't, even though I thought I was in my own little world, that's impossible in any relationship, right?
Yeah.
Like any relationship, it doesn't just have to be your kids and your family. We there is an energy that we are exuding, and that just blew my mind. And that was I've had a lot of ahas over the last 5 years.
Kids are such good mirrors. I mean, I can remember very vividly, and my experience was really different, but I started traveling again when my youngest, who's going to be 10 on Monday, was 1. So like weaned the kid, mom's on an airplane going to Europe, kind of in this continuous loop for almost 18 months. And this was me, nothing else. I had a stay-at-home husband, but immediately I said, I need to keep the wheels on the bus no matter where I am in the world. So I was cooking a week's worth of dinners and putting them in the refrigerator before I left. I was making sure all of the laundry was done. I was scheduling the house cleaner, I was literally making sure that the entire machine operated exactly as it would if I was there, except I wasn't there.
Right.
And I did that for years, literally. And it was exhausting, and I was always sick and run down and, in different time zones, calling in to make sure I said good morning to them and good night to them. And it was checking all the things, homework done, field trip form signed, did you wear a sweatshirt to school today? Whatever it was. We just went through all of the things. I think even in that season, I was a treasurer of the PTA because I was insane. I mean, just trying to do all the things.
Yeah.
And I looked up one day and was talking to my oldest, who was probably, I don't remember how old he was. He was under 10. And he asked me to do something for him that he could do himself. And I said, buddy, you can do that on your own. And he said, well, moms do everything for everybody.
Wow.
And I stopped and I was like, oh no, that is not what the lesson that we want to have learned here. And it was because I was trying to make sure everybody was so cared for.
Yeah.
Because I knew that I was so absent kind of from the day to day that I was overcompensating. And what that created was an environment that had laid the foundation in these very formative years for these small humans, that the woman in the house, or, whatever that role is, the mom, so to speak, in the situation, because there are definitely same gender households where one is more, the other, just takes care of it all, does all of the things. And that's just the way that it's supposed to go. Yeah. And it was really in that moment where he's just this little mirror back to me. Well, you do all the things. So of course I'm coming to you with, whatever it is. And it just completely flipped the script. And I was like, nope, we're all going to learn how to be self-sufficient. And then I really started to just, whenever I could, say, we have somebody help us clean the house. Mom doesn't clean the house because she doesn't have time to clean the house. And we have somebody that does this, and we have, your dad does that. And I just started to really verbalize all the things, and quite honestly change my behavior, stop leaving dinners in the fridge and stopped a lot of that stuff. Yeah. But I think sometimes it takes, you have all these expectations from yourself around the sort of parent that you want to be, so that these small humans become big humans that are a reflection of all that hard work and love that you poured into them. And I had this moment where I was like, oh, that is not, I don't want you to go into the world and expect that whatever, partner you have in life, they're going to do all the stuff. And you could just sit back and put your feet up and, ask for another cocktail. That's not happening.
That's not what we're doing either. But it makes sense, right? You had guilt for the fact that you were leaving. Yeah. And so what were you doing? You were overcompensating by basically, in that subconscious way, if I sacrifice myself to the brink, I am proving my love and my worthiness, and it's justifying me being out of the house. And, in this interesting, this is the backwards way of people pleasing, it's a control, right? It makes us feel better. We feel like we have more control. It kind of tempers the guilt. We can kind of check that box. But really the the problem isn't being addressed. It's again, just surface things. And then one of the most beautiful parts about finally, being really clear about our own limitations and what we're able to go through and what we can bring to the table, it creates this opportunity for the people in our life to show up and reach their potential and to be able to support us the way that they want to, right? I think moms have this interesting way of don't want to be a burden. So rather than explain like, babe, this is how bedtime routine goes, or this is how we feed the baby, we just say, fine, I'll just do it by myself. But we're robbing the people in our life from participating in our life, right? We're keeping them at an arm's distance.
Yeah.
And there's so many different ways to kind of start to work through your mom guilt. And when I remember all the time, I'm like, no. My husband wants to support me. He wants to be a captain on this ship. He does not want to be excluded and demeaned and treated like an afterthought. How am I going to let him do that? I got to say, like, babe, I need this and this and this. What do you need? Like, we need to be working together as a team. And so, I think mom guilt it's hard for us to have the awareness around it. But if we can even just start small, right? Like you said, like, I'm not going to leave the dinners in the fridge. My family is flipping incredible. They are capable of feeding themselves, right? And they're going to be like, I'm amazing. I fed myself. Like, I'm so proud of myself.
Yeah, absolutely. So is that where the idea of the Sunday sink came up when you started to have these realizations? Is that kind of the genesis or where it was born? And can you tell us a little bit about that?
I love my Sunday sink. So I have 3 kids. I'm a working from home mama, and my husband travels 70% of the year. And I started to notice the questions my husband was asking me. They were pissing me off. I was like, how do you not know what time the kids are supposed to get picked up from school? How do you not know when soccer practice is? We have been literally going through this for years and years and years. And I realized I was getting super frustrated and exhausted having to repeat myself. But he was also frustrated because he really wasn't included. He really he was not privy. And to your point, he was feeling guilty because he works all the time. He wants to be present when he can. And I realized this is an information problem. We really are not communicating. I am keeping all of this protected like the ring, and I'm not sharing the schedule with the family. And so not only is it going to allow us to show up and be there for each other, it's also going to help us understand, oh my gosh, you have that going on, and you have that going on, and you have that going on. So it started out that I wanted to just share information. I thought that just logistically, it was going to help us have an easier week if we knew when the permission slip was due, and my husband knew, could he take one of the kids to school, and giving him a fighting chance if I told him before the day of. Through doing this every week, we now have more appreciation for each other, right? Like now when my husband thinks like, what do you do all day? He knows. And same thing, I know what he's working on. And so there's this respect, and we don't have as much resentment as we did before, where you feel like I'm doing all the things and no one appreciates me and no one knows how hard I work. Well, now they do, because we told everybody how hard we're all working. And so there's more connection, there's more appreciation, there's more understanding and patience. And I don't repeat myself as much. And I love that. And I'm not shocked when my kid says, Mom, I need white baseball pants. I already knew. He told me on Sunday. So it gave me time to get stuff done. So it's just it's like we're being more considerate. And so I love my Sunday sink. I mean, if you don't do anything else but the Sunday sink, it will change your life. And it takes 10 minutes? And we're 5, a family of 5. So it's great.
And the whole family participates, right? So this is like a dedicated moment in time where everybody's in one spot, just figuring out what the week looks like.
We sit around our kitchen island. Every time I bring it up, my kids for sure moan and groan and roll their eyes. But once it's done, it's done. And we all feel like we roll into Monday a little less anxious. We roll into Monday not yelling as much. Everybody knows what's supposed to happen the next day. And, I honestly think about moms a lot as CEOs. We're trying to run a business. As unromantic as that sounds, we really are. And so you think, I've got to get everybody in my company up to date on what's happening. And if I'm asking for this big project to happen, but I'm not giving them all the information, of course it's going to fail. So what do we all need? We need information. We need time to prepare. We need respect. And I do appreciate, I have a 10-year-old. What does he have on his calendar? baseball practice, but at least he still gets a moment to say what he's got going on and to have his calendar. He feels as valid and equal with the rest of us, which also just helps with confidence building and good systems, right? Like this, if you want to have a busy life, there has to be planning and intention around it. You can't wing it. You can't wing it as a mom. You definitely can't wing it as a mom who's working out of the house. You got it. You know, this kind of sets us up for success. So I love it.
Yeah. And I think that it folds really nicely into something that I advise often to
you and I love our calendars.
Calendar's your best weapon. That's what I say. It's like exactly how you protect against all the things. But what I advise is that, you take the last hour of your workday on Friday and you just say, what's going on the next week? What do I have from a business perspective that I have to protect? Is there a trip? Is there like a half day meeting out of town? Am I working out of the house, but there's a client call I have to be on where I can't have dogs barking and kids screaming and somebody running in and asking me where their other blue sock is because I can't find all the pieces of the baseball uniform, like what exactly is going on? And by being able to come into the house for the weekend, understanding what your business priorities are for the following week, and then have the Sunday sync and pull it all together, right there in that one spot, you can say, to whichever adults are helping you. And I have a whole village. It's not just my husband, but, we've got grandparents and, my sister and I sat at a baseball game yesterday for about 20 minutes trying to figure out who was going to take kids where on Saturday because there's not enough adults and too many children with events. And it allows you to just say, like, here's what I got going on. Like, I can't do practice drop off this week because I'm not going to be home until 6. Or you can communicate to the kid, dude, I'll be at your game, but I'm going to be an hour late. And here's why. And it gives the kids a chance to prepare. It gives you a chance to prepare. And then if you need to, go into work on Monday and shift things because you've had that discussion and you realize that there is a school play at 2:00 on Thursday and you really want to be there. So you need to leave at noon. You can go in and make the adjustment Monday morning instead of coming in on Thursday, panicked and trying to figure out how to move your whole calendar around. It just a little bit of intentionality with everybody at the table agreeing that this is how the machine is going to work. Relieves so much stress. Everywhere else.
Like you said, if your son's at the baseball game and he already knows when to expect you, it just removes any chance of misunderstanding and disappointment. And we don't want him what a horrible pressure for him to be holding on to, wondering and looking, and he's distracted. And, for a mom in whatever capacity she is momming, I tell my clients all the time, we cannot wing it because we have too many interruptions. And we cannot remove the interruptions. We just can't. And even if you have a baby, you have this plan that the baby's going to sleep from 1 to 2:30. Of course, they only sleep till 1:45 that day, right? So we have to give ourselves also this foundation of confidence, feeling less overwhelmed, having as much information so that when the interruptions do happen, we know how to get our focus back onto the thing we want to focus on that day, right? Otherwise, we just spin and then we're so busy and you think at the end of the day, I'm so busy and I did nothing, right? And so we know this, it helps alleviate some of that frustration from the interruptions, a lot of the misunderstandings between you and your partner over who's working harder. It removes the need for like the tit for tat, like I took out the trash or, the wishing he could read or they could read your mind. And it really just alleviates any kind of future disappointment because people have it's like, gosh, let's set ourselves up for success. How do we do that? Information and communication, I think, is as unsexy as it is. We all wish we were in a rom-com. You can create your own rom-com, but you got to give people the script, right? Like they need to know what's 100%. Happening. So, yeah.
Yeah. And it's not, parenting is hard. Managing a household is really difficult. I think we don't give it enough credit or credence sometimes. One of the things that I've really been enjoying watching over the past few months with you is that you find a way to take the machine that you have churning kind of on a regular week, week in, week out basis and pause it. And take family vacations. You guys went skiing. I think you were just in Hawaii. There was definitely some spring training action with maybe on spring break with the kids. You have these moments of time where you just like we're just going to push pause
Yeah.
on the machine. And how have you figured out how to be able to do that, show up, be present, stop all the things, and not carry that like internal narrative kind of in the back of your mind about all of the stuff that's not happening because you're on the vacation or you're taking the trip or you're at a horse show or you're whatever? What coping mechanisms, what processes have you put in place to be able to do those things?
It's a great question. And it probably will tie back to a little bit of what you are so passionate about, is those core values.
Mm-hmm.
And I think stepping back and realizing at one point, I wrote down my top 5 priorities, and I started to ask myself, is my calendar supporting my top 5 priorities? And so it's like the way you say, like at the end of the day, when you're talking to your kids, like, are we still funneling our thoughts and actions and behaviors through these core values, through these priorities? And one of the priorities for me is family. It is family time. I don't live where my extended family is. I know. So in my head, I know I have to travel. I know that has to be a part of our life. So how can I set myself up to pull that off and not do it at my own detriment? And so it is things like these little systems. It's, these Sunday syncs. It's, taking care of myself. It's how I talk to myself, right? Like I write my priorities down. And when I have that moment of, should I? I'm like, why am I shoulding myself? This is absolutely part of what's important to me, right? If, so I don't get back to that email, but now I get to go spend time with my dad, right? Like there's all these things, but it is a recommitment. It is something you have to, it's all self-love and self-care and, happiness and bliss and all of that. You don't just hit it. There's not a destination. It is constant focus and priority and work and intention. It gets easier with practice. You become more confident when you need to say no to something because you're very clear that that doesn't fall into your priorities. But if you have a trip coming up and you've got to get some things done, it's not meant that you have to break your back to earn that trip, right? But it is thinking of like, does this have to happen right now? No, it really doesn't. I'll actually be driving home from stuff and I'll say, I got to get this podcast in and I got to call my mom back and I've got to do that thing for the school board. What needs to happen today? I need to call my mom. Okay. I can get to the school board is going to be functioning even if I get it to them in the next 3 days. So there is a lot of conversations that I have to have. And I'm a Manny Gen. I'm a sacral authority. So I do really well with binary. And I ask myself, do I want to move my body or do I want to fold the laundry? I'm going to move my body because then I will be better and happier at dinner time. And I can actually get my kids to help fold the laundry. Like there's ways that you can do things to where you're still getting everything done, but not as a mommy martyr, not as I have to break my back. Oh, gosh, I'll talk about Mother's Day, but I have to break my back to earn this trip. But I don't know that I wouldn't be able to talk to myself so clearly. And you talk about clarity so much had I not identified what really matters to me. And when I'm really clear about what matters to me, I don't second guess it. And I don't compare myself to other people because I'm very proud of what matters to me. And those 5 things, that's how I'm living my life. And it takes that was a new practice that I had to learn how to do. It gets so easy over time and you start to appreciate how good you feel when you're showing up living through those priorities, that it becomes you have more momentum to keep doing that versus going back to how you were feeling before. So it is a process, but life is beautiful, but it does take commitment. It takes consistent action, but that does start to pay off. So that's probably how I do really talk to myself very, very I am a very happy in my head talker to myself kind of person. And that helps how you talk to yourself. It really does.
Absolutely. I mean, the voice that you hear the most often is your own.
Yeah.
So why not just be kind to yourself,
Yeah.
right? I mean, imagine how much better you just feel internally about yourself if all you're hearing is this internal narrative that's kind and giving yourself grace and, all of the things. And core values, priorities, you can kind of call them whatever you want. They provide just this framework that everybody can do everything through. This is how we make decisions. This is how we set priorities. This is how we choose how we're going to behave and how we're going to show up. And it's with even with the kids being able to use the language consistently, as you get kind of into the older they get, the more sticky situations they get into, I would say. Like the friends get complicated, the choices they have to make, the things they're thinking about and seeing and witnessing. And, one of my core values is foster inclusion. And we had a really interesting conversation with my 11-year-old as he was going to sixth grade camp about, you're going to know all these kids. He's a social butterfly. He knows everybody everywhere. He's just in it, just an extrovert living his best life. And I said, you've got to remember that your friends aren't the same. They're very sheltered and they don't play the sports that you play. And, they're not active out there in the world. And so part of that foster inclusion value that we have is that you keep the people that you are closest with along with you as you go. Mm-hmm. You're not trading off front, you're going to get excited and see them and do all the things. And then you're going to leave these people behind that are really important to you. Yeah. And, it kind of goes both ways. And I think being clear on those pieces, whether there's 5 of them or there's 3 or there's 1 or whatever it is, if you can align with the adults in the house and the kids in your house and everybody understands what that framework is, it just simplifies the entire, just all of it.
It simplifies it. It bonds you to your family. And I feel more confident because I know what's important to me. I know why it's important to me. And and it allows me to be more considerate and to appreciate someone else's differences because I'm not feeling insecure anymore. And when you don't know if you don't really know yourself and you don't really know what matters to you, what do? You turn out, you look for answers outside of you. And sure, you try things on and you see how they fit. That's what our 20s are about, a little bit into our 30s. But if you really want, I talk to a lot of moms who are so worried about making sure that they are constantly saying, be a good person, do this, do this, do this. I'm like, it's not about what's coming out of your mouth. It's about how you are living your life. Mm-hmm. And if you're really clear about your own values and your priorities and you are living your life through those, it is inevitable that lesson that you want to instill in your kids, it's coming out. It is 100% coming out. So it helps me be more confident. And so if somebody's choosing to live their life in a different way, sure, everybody gets pinged. We are human. It's, you can't say you're never going to compare again. But then I check it. I'm like, I'm so glad that they're happy. That wouldn't make me happy. And that's wonderful. I already know, right? So those core values, really, those priorities help you come back like, got it. This is where my heart is. And this is who I am. And we talk about that all the time. We don't even say things like we are a such and such family. We are a family who loves. We are a family who travels. We are a family who includes. We are a family who learns. We are a family. This is what we do. And so that's really how our kids are identifying themselves. Like, oh, I'm a learner. I'm a traveler. I'm an explorer. Like I'm a lover, and so it does come out if you know what matters to you. And I think that has helped me feel less insecure as a mom. And so it helps me balance my mom guilt. Right.
Oh, that's so phenomenal. I love it. I love it. So you made a comment a few minutes ago about Mother's Day. So let me have it. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on this, May holiday?
I do appreciate that there is a day to honor the moms. What makes me upset is that we place so much expectation that this is the day when all of my lack of love and shame and guilt just disappears and I am poured into and I receive all of the validation and all of the worth. And then what happens? That it's just a day. Mm-hmm. It's just one day. Same as New Year's Eve. Like, this is not going to be the greatest night of your life. If it is, I'm so in awe because every New Year's Eve I've been like, this was not that great. And it's that random Tuesday night that you go out with your friends and you're like, this was the greatest night. This was the night that was so unexpected. And so Mother's Day, I read you'll start to see these things come up on Instagram where this mom will say, I did 85 loads of laundry. This is how you were living before. Mm-hmm. I, did this and this, these 55 things so that I can have a day off on Mother's Day. I'm like, what the flip? You just burned yourself out for a day. Why not create a system so that Mother's Day is every day?
100%.
Why are we not showing up feeling loved, appreciated, supported, spoiled, and connected 365 days out of the year? You don't have to be a mommy martyr and suffer and then all of a sudden wait for Mother's Day to fix all of the problems, because it's impossible. It's the same way if you are chronically exhausted, one night of sleep ain't going to cut it, right? It is going to take a long time to recover from mom burnout, mom exhaustion, mom fatigue, decision fatigue. One trip, one night, one day is not going to solve it. But it breaks my heart when moms want that day to solve all the problems, and then inevitably it doesn't. And then they are left feeling even more disappointed. So I love Mother's Day. I think it's great, but it's not, I just treat it like, yes, we should all be together. Talk about those core values. What do I really want on Mother's Day? I'm going to tell you what I want, and we're going to have a great day. And it is just a day. But I think that we should be waking up every day thinking, how can I make today Mother's Day for myself? I am a mother every day of the year, and I deserve everything I desire all of the days, not just on that one day. So that's my asterisk about Mother's Day. I mean, have a great Mother's Day, but
what floors me about this, because I think you and I look at things a little bit similarly sometimes, is the big business around this holiday in comparison to Father's Day. Like if you just compare the two things, right? Like, I mean, there's gifts and all that, but aside, every restaurant is throwing a brunch because mom doesn't want to cook. You know, every restaurant's having some special dinner. There's all sorts of deals around food delivery, and you know, it's one of the busiest days of the year for florists. And it's like there's just the commercialization around it is like reinforcing that this is an underserved, underrespected, you know, undervalued role. And, you know, dads are just different. Father's Day is just different. And you don't have that machine. Yeah, you've got the cards and the whatever, but like it's just kind of you know, a footnote, so to speak, as things go. And that infuriates me, because I think what happens is all of this external input starts to, and I could go on a tear about social media and what you're cultivating and all the things, but let's just, you know, stick with big business. All of this external input is everybody's world's supposed to stop for a day to honor you. And like, you should be expecting gifts and flowers and these fancy meals and your kids to look perfect and them to behave in the restaurant. I mean, I had one Mother's Day where, I don't know, he was probably 2. We were in the alley of a restaurant for 2.5 hours with him laying on the floor just throwing a fit. Like that was just it. Like, didn't want to be in a restaurant. He was 2 and I knew it was a bad idea. And you know, the other family member that was with me celebrating Mother's Day, she had a wonderful time. I probably cried with him at some point in the alley, you know, and and it's all because like the external world is saying this is the importance. Like this is what this day is supposed to be. And it was at that moment for me anyway, where I was like, this is just bullshit. Like we are not doing this anymore. Like we are just, you know, it is another day on the calendar. Like if you guys want to do something nice, I will be very grateful for. But if on a random Tuesday you want to do something nice, also great. And if your nice thing is that you empty the dishwasher, we're also fine. Like,
we're also fine. And what's so ironic about Mother's Day is who's planning it? The mom. And what's happening is it just confirms her belief that she is supposed to be suffering all of those other days, and she gets her respite on this one day. So it just it confirms that whole narrative that actually moms are supposed to be overworked, exhausted, unappreciated, and working for everybody else. But guess what? You get this day. So it's all going to be okay. It's all going to be fine so it's like, it's this incredible cycle. You know, when you become a mom, I'll never forget all these pieces of advice I got, or all this feedback. It was, go see all the movies now, because you're never going to get to a movie again. You can sleep when you're dead. You're just a vessel now. I can hear the words floating in the air. I'm like, I'm a vessel. What? And so I really marched into motherhood thinking, oh, this is how it is. My life as I know it is over. My turn is done. I am here to provide my physical, emotional, and mental body for everybody else. And so what happened is I lived that way. I lived as the self-sacrificing, bitchy mommy martyr, and I never questioned it. And to your point, like society just keeps confirming it by the movies, by the books, by the stories, right? Like, my gosh, don't get me started on the female tangent. I won't go too far, but like It's like if you want to have sex, you're a slut. If you want to work out of the house, you're greedy. If you want to eat, then you're a glutton, right? So any of our desires could be misinterpreted as evil, damaging, right? And so then we hold ourselves back and say, I can't, I shouldn't, I must not, because if I do, what harm am I going to cause? And so then it just keeps getting confirmed. You're right. If you have desires outside of Mother's Day, yikes, you're selfish. So just wait for that day. Wait for the FDT florist and the, fruit bouquet to show up, and then calm down. Right. And so that's my tangent for the day.
Hey, listen, tangent away. I can't believe we're so close to the end. We're going to have to do another one of these to continue on. But, before we close, I always end these discussions with some questions, because I think that it just helps. And I think you almost hit on the very first one, which was, what's the worst advice as a mom? What was the worst advice? Maybe even, going into business on your own and trying to juggle all the things that you received from somebody. What would you say was the worst thing?
It probably was, and I can't think of specifically an example, but it was, this has worked for me. So this worked for your mom and your grandmom and your best friend. So it should just work for you too. And so the advice was that if the breastfeeding was hard, or if I just was crying all the time, and, but they didn't get help, they didn't ask for, a mommy's helper, so it made me stop from using my own voice to really share, like, I'm not doing well. I felt shame that I needed to do it differently. What was wrong with me? That what worked for my mom and my grandmom, it wasn't working for me. So that was probably the worst advice I got, was that I shouldn't question things.
Yeah. Who are you? You don't know any better than we do. This is the way it's done. Just keep going. And
just keep going. It's gaslighting, right? Like, 100%. I walked to school 10 miles in the snow. Why should you be complaining? And so you think, gosh, what's wrong with me that I want to complain? Okay, I need to add more. I need to put more on my to-do list and make up for the fact that I'm not happy because everybody else was happy. And so that was probably the worst advice I got.
Yeah. And I think for anybody out there that's hearing that right now, my suggestion is go find another voice. Keep asking questions, keep trying to find out, whatever problem you're trying to solve, because sooner or later somebody will say something to you and you'll be like, oh, that's it. Like, that hits. That's it. That's what I need to do. Yeah. So in that lens, what's the best advice that you've ever received?
The best advice I ever got was from my husband, actually. I was so insecure as a new mom that I decided I was going to read every book that had ever been printed about eating, sleeping, napping, pooping, whatever. And I was highlighting it. I was in bed reading it. And, so what happened was I was so locked into, this is how the nap schedule is supposed to look. And so I started to manufacture a schedule for my kid rather than create a schedule around my kids' needs, and their own, listen to their body. And my husband just came and took the book for me and closed it. And he just said, trust your gut. Trust it. I was like, oh. And honestly, since then, it's like that kind of primal connection that deep down, we know what is best for our kids and our family. We know we are the mom of our kids for a reason. And the second he kind of, not that I needed permission from him, but he kind of snapped me out of this mom stress spiral and just said, just stop absorbing information and just get down to the primal part of your body and connect with your kid. And that was a huge, trust my gut.
Such good advice. And then here you are all those years later, now knowing your human design and knowing that he actually knew, even if he didn't know that that's what it was. So that's amazing.
Amazing.
How right he was. All right. The last question that I have for you today, because I cannot believe that we've been chatting for so long already. It went by so fast. Is you have all of these balls that you're juggling. You've got this great, healthy, connected family. You've got your business. You have you and so much life left to live, So, when we get to the end, and it's a happy end, it's not a sad end, but when we get to the end, and I always say when 3 or 4 generations from now are telling stories about you, what do you want your legacy to be?
I really want women and moms and my daughter to look at me and say, she went after everything she wanted.
Mm.
And she manifested it all. Like, I just want them to look at me and be like, she never held back. She didn't quiet herself and silence herself. And she did it in such a way that the people that were meant for her, they were attracted to her. Like, I just want that feeling like she believed that everything she desired, she was worthy of it. And I just want people to look at me and say, she did it. She went after it. And if she went after it, I can go after it. I just want that empowerment to come through. And I want it to be something that people want to take on.
Yeah. To inspire them to take action and
activate people, right? But
yeah,
I think about that, Bronnie, where, that people laying on their deathbed, they just say, gosh, I really wish I hadn't lived it for other people. And, if I think about, I know you have a question you ask yourself every day, like if I'm showing up and being that example, I'm always asking myself, I don't want to be forming a future if only. If only I had blank. I don't want that to be in my language.
That is such a great mindset to have. Just kind of a pulse check with yourself to say, am I living out of scarcity or abundance?
Yeah.
And what is that? Well, Scottie, I thank you so much for being here. You're definitely coming back because I feel like you and I could probably talk for the next 15 years around all of these topics and pour into the community. But I really appreciate your time today and all that you shared with us. To the opt-in community, we close always the same way that we do. But before we do that, Scottie, how can all of these humans that are out there listening to us find you, connect with you? What's the best way to do that?
Amazing. Probably Instagram is the best way to get into my world. And that's at Scottie Durrett. And then the Momplex podcast. That's probably going to be my best resources to get to know me, who I am. And always I'm sharing offers and coaching and ways to work together, and the High Vibe Moms community. And that's a free community. You said it in the podcast, like the power is in the community, right? Yeah. And speaking up and starting to make sure you're connecting with those like-minded mamas that can help you grow.
All right. Well, you heard it from Scottie. Go follow her right now on Instagram. You are listening to this on a device that will let you do that. And before you get out of whatever you're listening to this in, go follow her go or subscribe to her podcast, because those things count to those of us that are talking through a microphone to you every week. And until next time, friends, just remember that you are wise and you are capable and you are strong. And I believe in you. Thanks, Scottie.
Thank you.